What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Tuesday, August 5th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 1900 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from here in the US and from overseas. Before I get into all the latest World War III talk, I want to talk to you guys about some astronomy stuff and some geological stuff. So I wanted to update you on this hostile alien probe that some scientists are saying is an alien surveillance and reconnaissance ship that has just entered our solar system. Now, the mainstream scientists are calling this thing an interstellar object or potentially a comet, but we have some Harvard scientists saying that this is an alien probe, and we're hearing now that this probe, also known as 3I Atlas, could reach Earth this fall between November 21st and December 5th. Okay, so right around Thanksgiving time, we can expect this alien probe to reach Earth or around Earth. So be on the lookout for that around Thanksgiving. Who knows, maybe they're going to start landing here. And what's also interesting about this alien probe or interstellar object is that it has no visible tail or spectral fingerprints of gas around it like normal comets do. So this would support the theory that this is not just a comet or a giant rock floating through space like mainstream science is saying, but that this is actually a ship of some kind from other worldly civilizations that's here to observe planet Earth and observe life in our solar system and potentially collect information on what kind of resources are here. So hopefully this alien ship is not going to attack us, okay? But just wanted to share that with you. So right around Thanksgiving time, between November 21st and December 5th, we can expect this interstellar object or alien surveillance ship to arrive near our planet. And we also have a large unexplained heat mass, officially named the Northern Appalachian Anomaly, forming beneath the eastern United States and moving towards New York. This anomaly, a large blob of superheated rock located about 125 miles deep, is causing scientists to rethink the geological stability of the region. The NAA, or Northern Appalachian Anomaly, is part of a larger phenomenon called a mantle wave, which is a slow inland migration of heat and deformation from a rift that occurred when Greenland separated from North America millions of years ago, according to Newsweek. Now, some of the key details about this thing is that it's currently situated beneath New England, extending about 220 miles across, and it's 125 miles deep. So some kind of massive magma chamber, essentially, underneath the Northern Appalachian Mountains, okay, which is like New England. And they're saying that it could migrate towards New York City in 1,000,000 years or something like that. But this could potentially explain some of those weird earthquakes in New Hampshire that happen a lot, and even in New York City area, okay? But we have some major breaking news coming in from the Russia-US World War III nuclear war front. So we had Trump on the roof of the White House today, and he told reporters that he was talking with people on the roof of the White House about building nuclear missiles. So I want to just play this video for you, and this just came right after Russia announced that they will no longer be following the INF treaty, and they will start deploying short to medium range ballistic missiles and cruise missiles near NATO and U.S. territory. So we could potentially have a Cuban Missile Crisis of our time in the near future. Now, today, we had a high-priority reconnaissance plane flying through the central plains of the U.S. in a northeast to southwest pattern, which means that it was looking down towards Cuba. Okay, now Russia has their Oreshnik missiles, which are basically a two-stage ICBM. So typically an ICBM has 3 rocket engines, which give them a range of well over 6,000 or 7,000 miles, basically making them a global missile. You can hit anywhere in the world with an ICBM. But the Russians just removed 1 rocket engine. So basically, you're removing probably about 30% of the range of an ICBM. So now you have a missile that can travel up to maybe 4,000 miles, okay? And it can strike medium-range targets better. And Putin is already talking about deploying these in Belarus later this year, which would put all of NATO territory within striking distance. And what's interesting is today that high-priority reconnaissance plane, which is a RC-135 combat cent, and these planes provide intelligence directly to the president, and they specialize in picking up radar signatures and pinpointing the locations of enemy radars and missile defenses and missile sites. Okay, and they send that information directly to the president. There's only 2 of these planes officially. So if one of them is patrolling somewhere, it's usually a sign that something is going on that the president and the Joint Chiefs, the top generals, want to get a closer look at. It's very, very unusual for them to be deployed over the continental U.S. Typically, they're deployed over Eastern Europe along the border of Russia, or more frequently in South Korea along the DMZ. Okay, so this is extremely concerning with all this nuclear war talk in recent days, with Russia activating their dead hand system and Trump saying that he moved 2 nuclear-armed subs into position around Russia. Now we have a high-priority reconnaissance plane looking down towards Cuba, and we have Trump on the roof of the White House talking about nuclear missiles, and we have Russia saying that they're going to be deploying medium-range missiles, and Putin said on Friday that they're going to be deploying Oreshniks in Belarus and mass-producing the Oreshniks. So I want to just play this video for you of Trump on the roof of the White House today. Take a listen.
Mr. President, what do you want to build? What are you trying to build?
Sir, do you approve?
You say more missiles?
Are you building missiles?
What? Come on, Dad.
Might be missiles.
Did you say missiles?
Taking over all of Gaza, sir.
Okay, so they asked him, what are you trying to build? And he says missiles, nuclear missiles. Okay, so Trump's mind is now focused heavily on nuclear missiles, nuclear war. He wants to make sure that the U.S. nuclear arsenal is the best in the world, better than Russia's. He absolutely despises Putin now, and his mind has completely went 180 from a few months ago where he was trying to make a deal with Putin, and now he's gone the complete opposite direction of basically a new Cold War arms race. Okay, and I want to remind you guys that in Trump's first term, he was trying to build an intermediate range ground-launched and sea-launched cruise missile that would be like similar to a Tomahawk missile, but it would be nuclear capable. And he wanted to deploy that in Europe as a counter to some of the Russian systems. And that's why Trump pulled out of the INF treaty, but Biden canceled that program. Okay, so Trump was actually pretty hawkish against Russia in his first term, and it seems like he's going back to those tendencies now, okay, talking about building nuclear missiles.
Sir, do you approve?
You say more missiles?
Are you building missiles?
What? Come on, Dad.
So very, very serious times we're living in right now. We have this massive ego battle between Trump and Putin, and the U.S. and Russia have the most nuclear weapons on Earth today, okay? And I want to show you guys this high priority reconnaissance plane. You can see it was flying from Arizona up to Kansas, back and forth multiple times. And these planes have a side-looking radar, so that means it was looking down towards the Gulf of America, down towards Cuba, probably to see if Russia deployed any Oreshniks there. We also had a U.S. military VIP leave Colorado Springs, which is home of NORAD and the Cheyenne Mountain Doomsday Bunker, and head back to D.C., which is interesting. We also had a NASA surveillance plane, NASA's version of a U-2 spy plane flying over eastern Nevada, and we have a nuclear war command and control plane off the coast of California. And I want to read to you what Dmitry Medvedev wrote recently in response to Trump deploying those submarines. He didn't actually directly respond to that. He said the Russian Foreign Ministry's statement on the withdrawal of the moratorium on the deployment of medium and short-range missiles is the result of NATO countries' anti-Russian policy. This is a new reality all of our opponents will have to reckon with. Expect further steps. Wow, so using the word opponents, saying expect further steps, and then Trump put sanctions on India already, and I want to remind you guys that next Monday is the 10-day deadline that Trump put on Russia for these massive crippling sanctions, okay? Next week sometime is when these sanctions go into effect on Russian oil buyers, all the countries that buy oil from Russia, India, Brazil, China, all these BRICS countries, which Trump despises the BRICS countries, okay? And he's going to sanction them all to try to cut off Russia's war machine, and that's going to go into effect next week. And what's interesting is that Russia has closed the airspace around their Kapustin Yar training facility in southern Russia. Now, this facility is where Russia launched their first Oreshnik from at Ukraine. Okay, so this is a known Oreshnik launch site, and they've closed the airspace, as you can see, in that whole area through Friday. So what that means is Russia is planning some kind of big attack on Ukraine before the sanctions go into effect next week. So we got to be on the lookout for that. But I want to read to you what Trump wrote on Truth Social. He said, India is not only buying massive amounts of Russian oil, they are then, for much of the oil purchased, selling it on the open market for big profits. They don't care how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine. Because of this, I will be substantially raising the tariff paid by India to the U.S. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So this is huge news, guys. Trump completely changing his tone here, talking about the Russian war machine and how people in Ukraine are being killed. If you remember, in the beginning of his term, he didn't really care too much about that. But now it seems like he's sympathizing more with the Ukrainians. So this is absolutely huge news, okay? I think basically Trump has completely given up on diplomacy, and now he's turning towards pressure. He's going to try sanctions first and try to exhaust that approach. And if the sanctions aren't enough, then he's going to look at deploying missiles into Europe, maybe arming countries that are on the border of Russia more, like Poland would be a prime candidate for receiving American nukes and a buildup of American forces. I want to remind you guys that during Trump's first term, he built so many bases in Poland and deployed thousands of troops, including a permanent rotation of forces in Poland, which no president did before. He could easily increase that pressure. He could give Poland nuclear weapons. He could send more troops into Poland. He could do a lot of different things that he hasn't even scratched the surface of yet, okay? This is just the beginning. First he tried diplomacy. Now he's going to try sanctions. After sanctions, the next thing will be giving more weapons to our NATO allies, and then the U.S. eventually deploying military forces and potentially nuclear missiles right next to Russia. I think that's going to happen, guys, okay? But I'm very concerned about a Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0. Putin can put Oreshniks in Cuba, and he could strike all of the Gulf Coast states, potentially even, well, actually, yeah, he could strike D.C. He could pretty much strike much of North America except maybe far northern Canada and Alaska, but pretty much all of North America he can strike with those Oreshniks from Cuba. Okay, that is extremely serious. Russia is no longer obliged to impose self-restrictions on the deployment of land-based launchers for medium and short-range missiles. Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has announced that it plans to end its partnership in the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, citing actions taken by the U.S. and its allies. In a statement, Russian officials claim that Russian initiatives have not been reciprocated. They added that the U.S. and its allies have not only openly outlined plans to deploy American land-based intermediate-range missiles in various regions, but have also already made significant progress in practical implementation of their intentions. The growing array of objective data indicates in particular the following: testing of the basic versions of the said weapons developed by Washington in a wide range of variations has been largely completed or is in the final stage, the statement adds. Serial production of some of these systems has begun. Specialized units and commands are being formed and deployed in the relevant regions by the Pentagon to ensure their advanced deployment and use. The necessary infrastructure is also being prepared for these tasks. In concrete terms, since 2023, we have been recording precedents of the transfer of American systems capable of ground-based INF launches to European NATO countries for the testing of these weapons during exercises that have a clear anti-Russian focus, the ministry claimed. In particular, we are talking about training in Denmark, during which a mobile launcher of the Mk-70 standard was used. The aforementioned actions of the U.S. and its allies are accompanied by official statements about the desire to ensure long-term presence of American weapons of this class in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region, continued the statement. Russia then commented that such action would require compensatory military technical measures from our country in order to counter newly emerging threats and maintain strategic balance. Now, what's interesting is the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs mentioned the Asia-Pacific region, not just Europe, but we do know that Ukraine could potentially be getting some of the U.S. Typhoon missile systems. Now, the Typhoon system is a long-range ground-launched missile system, and it's basically a truck that can launch Tomahawk missiles or SM-6 ballistic missile interceptors. So it can be used to intercept ballistic missiles like the Oreshnik launched from Russia, and it can launch Tomahawk missiles, either conventional or nuclear, which have a range of 1,000 miles, okay? And they want to get that from Germany, and the U.S. has already green-lighted that. Now, remember, Trump is not a fan of telling the world what he's doing, so there could be a lot going on behind the scenes about what we're giving to Ukraine, potentially arming up Poland, giving them nukes. We've already deployed B-61 nuclear gravity bombs to Great Britain for the first time in 20 years. Okay, so things are really escalating. Okay, so get prepared. Make sure you have a nuclear war survival plan. Check out my nuclear war survival playlist so you understand the basics of nuclear war survival. It's pretty easy to survive nuclear war if you know what you're doing. In a show of military might, Russia and China have commenced a series of mock combat drills and war games in the Sea of Japan. This comes just a day after President Trump moved U.S. nuclear submarines closer to Russia in response to provocative remarks from Russia's ex-president Dmitry Medvedev. The joint C-2025 exercises were initiated near Vladivostok, Russia's largest Pacific port, as per a statement from China's defense ministry. 4 Chinese vessels, including the guided missile destroyers Shaoxing and Urumqi, are participating in the 3-day maneuvers. The drills will encompass submarine rescue, joint anti-submarine air defense, and anti-missile operations and maritime combat, followed by naval patrols in relevant waters of the Pacific. After the drills, the two nations plan to conduct naval patrols in relevant waters of the Pacific. Zhang Xianggang, a spokesperson for Beijing's defense ministry, announced the drills on Wednesday, July 30th. He criticized the U.S. Air Force's drills with Japan and others in the region. He said the U.S. has been blindly flexing its muscles in the Asia-Pacific region and attempting to use military drills as a pretext to gang up, intimidate, and pressure other countries and undermine peace and stability in the region. This year, the drills are set to take place in the Sea of Japan. Japan's Ministry of Defense expressed serious security concerns in its annual report last month over China's increasing military cooperation with Russia. So this is huge news, guys. Russia and China holding massive drills right off the coast of Japan and off the coast of the Korean Peninsula near Vladivostok. And U.S. fighter jets were scrambled to intercept a civilian aircraft after it entered the airspace over Trump's Bedminster golf course in New Jersey this weekend. While he was staying there, the fighter jets had to deploy flares. A temporary flight restriction zone was in place over the New Jersey course when a pilot flew into it at around 12:50 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. The interception on Sunday afternoon was the second in the restriction zone that day and the 5th of that weekend. NORAD stressed that the flares they used, which may have been spotted by some members of the public, are employed with the highest regard for safety of the intercepted aircraft and people on the ground. And the Trump administration reportedly plans new sanctions on Russia's shadow oil fleet if Putin doesn't agree to a Ukrainian ceasefire by Friday. That's being reported by the Financial Times. So the first batch of sanctions on Russia could be deployed this Friday. And Iranian nuclear scientists visited Russian institutes in 2024 that work on components with possible nuclear weapons applications. This is being reported by the Financial Times. Okay, so this is not really anything new. If you have common sense, you probably would know this already, but basically Iranian nuclear scientists were studying at Russian nuclear institutes in 2024. And Russia is claiming that British intelligence and Ukraine are planning to attack Russian oil tankers in international waters. So basically, they're saying that Ukraine and the UK will conduct some kind of raids on these oil tankers, try to blow them up or whatever. We have some concerning news coming out of Poland. Germany has deployed 5 of their Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jets and 150 troops to a Polish airbase just east of the capital of Poland, Warsaw, in the town of Minsk Mazowiecki. What's interesting about where they deployed these fighter jets is that it's basically right in between Warsaw and Belarus. And we know that Belarus is doing big drills with Russia right on the border of Poland in September with 150,000 troops and all kinds of weaponry. So Germany has now moved their Eurofighters in between the Polish capital, Warsaw, and the Belarus border in the town of Minsk Mazowiecki. Very, very serious. And 5 Russian fighter jets were apparently hit in another major Ukrainian drone attack on the Russian Air Force. 2 Sukhoi 30 SM-3 Sukhoi 24 were hit at the Saki Air Base in Crimea. The 5 planes are worth about $120 million US. Wow. And the speed of the delivery of Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine depends on how soon the U.S. provides European countries with replacements. European arsenals are already depleted by previous aid to Ukraine, so there are concerns about potentially long-term gaps in their own air defenses if deliveries from the U.S. are not as fast as Trump has proposed. This is being reported by the German newspaper Bild. And Ukrainian drone strikes overnight disabled 2 Russian oil refineries, major Russian oil refineries, according to Reuters. Apparently, Rosneft's Novokubashevsk oil refinery in the Samara region and also a refinery in Ryazan has been hit. And we're hearing that the Turkish president will visit the capital of Ukraine in the coming days to meet with Zelensky. And Russia is reportedly preparing massive strikes on Ukraine's critical infrastructure this coming winter, according to the Ukrainian intelligence. And the New York Times is reporting that Russia is building an isolated internet fully controlled by the Kremlin. So that's very concerning, and some very concerning news coming out of Belarus. Belarus is reportedly planning to introduce martial law very soon. And what's interesting is the timing of that, with the Zapad 2025 exercises taking place in Belarus in the next few weeks in September. Belarus is going to introduce martial law as well. Is that because they're actually going to be invading maybe the Baltics or Poland, and so they need to lock down their society? So this way, while they're attacking NATO, people in Belarus don't try to overthrow the government there. And the Israeli Prime Minister will reportedly be holding a small cabinet meeting, followed by an expanded cabinet meeting before approving a Gaza annexation plan. Wow. And the U.S. Transportation Secretary and NASA Director Sean Duffy will announce plans this week to build a nuclear reactor on the moon. This is absolutely huge news. And the type of nuclear reactor I would imagine that they would build is a helium-3 reactor. And if you guys don't know what helium-3 is a very rare substance here on Earth. But on the moon, it's abundant because the moon does not have an atmosphere. And anytime there's solar radiation, which is constant in space, but especially like solar flares, it causes helium-3 to form on the moon. And here in the U.S., but here on Earth, because of our atmosphere, it prevents huge helium-3 deposits from forming. Now, the nice thing about helium-3 is if you fuse 2 helium-3s together, you form energy, but also your byproduct is basically like a form of water. So there's no massive radioactive waste like with traditional nuclear reactors. Okay, so you take helium-3 and helium-3 and you fuse them together, and the only byproduct is like a lightly radioactive water. And in return, you get massive amounts of energy. And there's so much helium-3 on the moon, on the surface of the moon, on the lunar soil, that it could be enough to power all of our energy for decades. Okay, so that is like the holy grail of energy right now, is helium-3. So my guess is this is probably going to be an experimental reactor at first. I think it's just going to be a small reactor to see if they can build a functioning helium-3 reactor on the moon. And from there, I don't know what they would do. It sounds like they want to build a base on the moon because, you know, having a nuclear reactor that uses resources directly from the moon and creates energy would allow you to have a permanent base on the moon. So that is very, very interesting. And some scientists have proposed the idea of mining the lunar soil and then sending it back to Earth and harvesting the helium-3 in order to make nuclear reactors with helium-3 here on planet Earth, which would reduce any kind of uranium requirements. We wouldn't need to use uranium, and you would not need a whole lot of lunar soil to get a lot of helium-3 out of it. So they say that maybe just like the equivalent of a few dump truck loads of lunar soil would be enough to have helium-3 reactors for decades, okay? And the Houthis in Yemen launched a ballistic missile at Israel earlier today, which the Israeli military said was intercepted. Sirens were sounded in central Israel and near Jerusalem. And Thailand begun a military buildup in the regions along the Thai-Cambodian border. And the Indian Army said there was no violation of ceasefire today after reports of Pakistani fire towards India. I want to also show you guys the latest situation with the tropics. Here we have the Atlantic Basin. We have two disturbances with a moderate chance of development. We have one off the coast of the Carolinas with a potential to turn into a tropical depression, which could head up north towards the Outer Banks or head out to sea. We have a tropical storm here way out in the Atlantic. And then we have another disturbance here near the equatorial Atlantic area. So the tropics are heating up. I'm going to be monitoring everything with the tropics this year and updating you guys accordingly as I always do. So make sure you stay tuned to my channel for hurricane coverage. And if there's any landfalling hurricanes, I will go live and potentially try to go on site and do some on-the-ground reporting. But until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.